Welcome to HardScript.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. My wife once said, "You act like a teenage boy begging for touch." I didn't argue. I just looked at her, then turned away. That was the moment something inside me shut off, quietly, permanently. She thought she'd won the conversation, but what she didn't realize was that it wasn't a fight anymore. It was a countdown. My name's Ryan Mercer, 41. Construction project manager in Austin, Texas. I've spent most of my life building things, houses, offices, bridges. But I couldn't build connection in my own home. Not with Claire. For 12 years, we'd been married. On paper, everything looked fine. 2 cars, 1 mortgage, weekend dinners with friends. But inside the walls, it was cold, detached, like living with a coworker who just happened to wear your ring. It didn't start that way. When we met, she was all fire and laughter, the kind of woman who made every room feel alive. Somewhere along the line, that turned into silence. The kind that hums just below the surface, sharp enough to cut through anything resembling warmth. I noticed it first when her phone became her favorite companion, always in her hand. Face down when I walked by, I told myself it was work. I wanted to believe that. You always want to believe it's not what it looks like. But it always is. The night she said those words, I'd reached across the bed, just to touch her hand. She didn't even flinch, just sighed and said, "You act like a teenage boy begging for touch." I pulled my hand back, stared at the ceiling, and realized we weren't married anymore. We were just sharing rent. I didn't respond that night. Didn't sleep either. I lay there in the dark, listening to her breathe, thinking about every project I'd ever built and how each one started the same way, with a blueprint. And I realized something. You can rebuild anything, even a life, if you start with a solid plan. By morning, I knew exactly what I had to do. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to disappear, methodically, quietly, piece by piece, until the day she refreshed a phone that would never ring again. The morning after that night, I didn't speak to her. Not out of anger. Out of calculation. I moved through the kitchen like a ghost. Coffee, briefcase, keys. She didn't look up from her phone once. That was fine. Silence gives you space to think. At work, my focus was sharper than it had been in months. It's funny how pain clarifies things. While everyone else scrambled through deadlines, I started making a different kind of plan. A blueprint, not for construction this time, but for exit. I started small. Changed my direct deposit to a separate account. Ordered a new debit card sent to my office instead of home. Backed up my personal files from the shared laptop onto a private drive. Nothing suspicious on its own. Just quiet adjustments, invisible to someone who'd stopped paying attention anyway. Over the next week, I began watching her the same way I'd watch a project site, checking timelines, patterns, and inconsistencies. She'd laugh at her phone, then hide the screen. She'd shower late at night and come out smelling like a stranger's cologne. She thought she was clever. She wasn't. I didn't confront her. There's no point in fighting with someone who's already left you in her mind. Instead, I listened. To her tone, to her habits, to the way she started dressing for work dinners that didn't exist. Every lie builds a structure, and structures eventually collapse under their own weight. You just have to know where to place the cracks. One night, she came home late again. I pretended to be asleep as she tiptoed through the room, her phone glowing in her hand. A message flashed before she could turn the screen, just a name. Mark. I didn't move. Didn't ask. I just stored it. By the end of the week, I had enough. Not proof for court, proof for myself. The kind that settles something deep inside you. Saturday morning, she asked if I wanted to go out for breakfast. I said I had errands. She shrugged and left with that same blank look she'd been wearing for months. I didn't run errands. I opened my laptop, logged into a new account, and started moving my life, digitally, financially, emotionally, out from under her name. She'd taken intimacy from me. I'd take invisibility from her. I started tracking her movements the way I'd track progress on a job site, quietly, methodically, without emotion. A new pattern always reveals itself if you just let people talk to themselves long enough. And Claire was talking, even when she thought she wasn't. Her yoga classes had turned into evening absences 3 times a week. Her perfume changed. Her phone stayed face down every time she entered a room. I didn't ask questions. Questions alert people. Silence collects answers. One Thursday, she left for her class at 6:30 p.m. I waited 10 minutes, then opened the small tracking app I'd installed through our shared car insurance login. It wasn't illegal, just practical. The route pinged across town, not to a studio, but to a Marriott near the highway. I stared at the map for a long time, not surprised. Just confirmed. I didn't drive there. I didn't need to see it. I'd already seen enough through the digital trail she left like breadcrumbs. Payment notifications, email confirmations, late-night texts from work friends. Every breadcrumb told the same story. That night, when she came home, she hummed softly in the shower. That detail stuck with me. The way people hum when they think life is fine. I sat on the couch, scrolling through the photos on my phone, deleting old ones of us. Every smile felt staged now. Every memory edited. I didn't confront her. I just started building distance like a wall, one brick at a time. New password on my laptop. Separate grocery receipts. Even moved some of my tools to the storage unit near my job site. Small things, quiet things. She didn't notice. She never noticed anything that didn't serve her. 2 days later, I called an old friend from college, Eli, now a divorce attorney. I didn't say much, just that I needed advice about asset division. He understood without needing the details. He always did. By the end of that week, I had a plan. Simple, direct, surgical. I wasn't going to catch her in the act or demand an explanation. I was going to do what I do best, dismantle something that was already collapsing. She thought she could disappear into her secrets. What she didn't know was that I'd already started disappearing first. I didn't change my routine. That's how people get caught. They shift too suddenly. I still made coffee in the morning, still left for work at the same time, still asked about her day even when I already knew where she'd been. Letting her believe I was blind gave me time. Time is the most valuable resource in any operation, and this was no different. While she slept, I worked. Not on construction plans, but on digital blueprints, financial accounts, property records, insurance policies. Every password, every document, every trace of shared dependency. I gathered everything and stored it on a single encrypted drive labeled Project North. To her, it would look like another work folder. To me, it was an escape plan. Eli had connected me with a private investigator. Not for drama, for verification. It's one thing to suspect, it's another to document. Within 4 days, I had a full report. Photos, dates, hotel receipts, all the proof anyone could need. She was seeing someone from her office. A regional marketing director named Jason Moore. Married. 2 kids. Predictable. I looked through the photos once. That was enough. I didn't feel anger. I felt confirmation. Proof turns emotion into math. It takes away the chaos and leaves you with clean numbers. I printed one photo and placed it in a sealed envelope labeled for attorney use only. The rest went into the trash. The next morning, Claire came into the kitchen wearing a smile I hadn't seen in months. She poured herself coffee, humming softly. She said she was heading out of town for a team retreat that weekend. I said that sounded great. She asked if I'd be fine alone. I said I already was. She didn't even notice what that meant. When she left for work, I sat at the kitchen table staring at the spot she'd just occupied. I thought about all the times I'd tried to reach for her and been met with indifference. How she'd rolled her eyes, said I was needy, called me a teenage boy begging for touch. Now, the irony was perfect. The next phase of my plan required the same thing she'd given me for years, distance. And I was finally ready to make it permanent. She left Friday afternoon with a suitcase too small for a retreat. I watched from the porch as her car turned the corner, then I went back inside. The silence that followed didn't feel empty. It felt like the first real breath I'd taken in years. I opened my laptop and logged into her email using the backup credentials she'd once given me for emergency use. She probably forgot. Most people do when they think you're harmless. Inside her inbox were confirmations for the hotel, the same Marriott near the highway. Different name on the reservation this time. Jason Moore. She hadn't even tried to hide it. I didn't print anything. Paper leaves trails. Instead, I uploaded everything to a secure drive for my attorney. Eli would handle the rest. I trusted him. He knew what quiet efficiency looked like. That evening, I poured myself a drink and went through the house one last time. Every photo, every memory, every trace of a life that used to mean something. I boxed what mattered and labeled it simply keep. Everything else would stay for her. You don't burn bridges when you can let them collapse on their own. The next morning, I packed my truck and drove to my brother's cabin 2 hours north. I didn't tell anyone. No forwarding address. No social media post. Just absence. It's amazing how invisible you can become when you stop announcing your pain. By noon, my phone started vibrating. First a message from Claire, then another, then a call. She said she'd come home early and didn't know where I was. She said we needed to talk. I didn't answer. I just stared at the screen, the irony not lost on me. The same woman who told me I begged for attention was now begging for mine. That night, I sat on the cabin porch, watching the lake turn silver under the moonlight. My phone buzzed again. Another message from her. Please, can you just call me? I turned it face down on the table. The silence that followed wasn't revenge. It was freedom. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel small. I felt like a man who'd finally stopped building something that never stood on solid ground. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight cutting through the blinds. The lake was still, quiet, untouched. My phone was on the nightstand, 12 missed calls, 8 messages, all from Claire. The last one just said, I don't understand what's happening. That was the first honest thing she'd said in months. I made coffee, sat by the window, and watched the mist drift across the water. I didn't feel guilt. Just a strange calm, like the silence after demolition, when the noise stops, and you can finally see the empty space where something broken used to stand. That's where I was. Eli called mid-morning. He said the documents were filed and served. Claire would receive them within 48 hours. He asked if I wanted to include any personal statements. I told him no. Words are cheap when the evidence speaks for itself. By afternoon, I turned my phone off completely. No signal, no noise, no temptation to look. The world kept spinning without me, and I liked that. Sometimes absence is louder than any confrontation. When I turned my phone back on that evening, the messages kept coming. At first, they were sharp, accusations, disbelief. Then they softened. She said she wanted to talk, to clear things up, to start over. I read them all once and deleted them. The quiet afterward felt like clean air. I knew what she was really feeling. It wasn't regret. It was panic. Control slipping away. People like Claire don't miss love, they miss relevance. The attention they thought they could take for granted. And now, the man she'd called needy was nowhere to be found. That night, I wrote a note. Not to her. To myself. A reminder. Do not return. Do not explain. Do not rebuild what you already buried. Then I folded it into my wallet. The next day, I took Scout, my dog, out on the lake. Just the two of us, water stretching into the horizon. No noise, no calls, no echoes of the past. For years, she'd accused me of begging for affection. Now she was refreshing a phone that would never ring again. The balance was perfect. Not revenge, just quiet symmetry. 3 days passed before I turned my phone back on. By then, I already knew what I'd see. The tone had shifted. Her messages weren't angry anymore. They were hollow. The kind of words people write when they realize the person they used to control has stopped listening. Please answer. We can fix this. I made a mistake. I scrolled through them once, then deleted them all without reading the details. She wasn't talking to me. She was talking to the echo of who I used to be. I spent that week at the cabin fixing small things, the dock, the roof, the loose latch on the door. Simple, tangible tasks. After years of trying to fix a marriage built on silence, repairing wood and nails felt like peace. Every hammer strike sounded like closure. On Thursday, Eli called again. Claire had finally responded to the divorce filing. No contest, no negotiation, just a signature. It didn't surprise me. She'd always been quick to give up once control slipped away. He said she'd asked if there was any chance to reconcile privately. I told him to proceed as planned. Some doors don't need slamming. They just stay closed. That night, I sat by the fire with a glass of whiskey and my thoughts. I realized I didn't hate her. Hate still requires emotion. What I felt was distance, a clean, unbreakable detachment. The kind that comes when you stop trying to understand why someone broke you and start understanding how you let them. The next morning, I drove back into town for the first time in a week. The city felt different, louder, busier, but I didn't feel like a part of it anymore. I stopped by my office, signed a few documents, and told my boss I'd be taking some time off indefinitely. He didn't ask why. He just nodded. Maybe he'd seen that look before, the kind of quiet that doesn't come from rest, but from resolution. When I got home, there was one last message waiting. "I'll wait for you to call," she'd written. I turned the phone over, screen down. Waiting was all she had left. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to answer anyone. The silence was mine now, and I wasn't giving it back. 2 weeks later, the divorce was finalized. A single email from Eli confirmed what I already knew in my gut. It was done. No dramatic courtroom scene, no confrontation, no apologies. Just signatures, paperwork, and silence. The cleanest endings rarely make noise. I spent that morning walking through downtown Austin, passing by the coffee shop where Claire and I used to meet before work. The same corner table, same glass windows. Different reality. Through the glass, I saw a couple sitting close, laughing quietly, leaning into each other the way Claire and I used to. I didn't feel jealousy. I felt distance, the kind that comes with perspective. Some things look perfect from the outside because no one's close enough to see the cracks. That night, I drove back to the cabin. The air smelled like rain and cedar. Scout trotted beside me as I unpacked groceries and logs for the fire. Routine had become its own kind of therapy. No texts, no apologies, no questions. Just work, food, and quiet. A few days later, Mason, my brother, stopped by unannounced. He said he'd heard from Claire through a mutual friend. Apparently, she was asking about me, wondering if I was okay, saying she just wanted closure. I told him closure is a word people use when they realize they can't reopen the door. Mason nodded, didn't push further. After he left, I sat by the lake and thought about the man I'd been 6 months ago. The one who reached across the bed and got rejected. The one who mistook begging for love. That man was gone. What replaced him wasn't bitterness, but precision. I finally understood that peace isn't something you find. It's something you stop giving away. The next morning, I saw that Claire had sent one last message. A photo of us from years ago, captioned, "I wish things had gone differently." I didn't delete it. I just archived it. History belongs in storage, not in the present. The phone buzzed again, another message, but I didn't check it. I set the phone down, poured my coffee, and watched the sun rise over the lake. Some people chase redemption. I'd found something better, silence that didn't need forgiving. A month later, I started running again. Long distance, early mornings before the city woke up. It wasn't about fitness. It was about control, the steady rhythm of steps, the sound of breath matching movement. You can't think about the past when you're focused on keeping pace with yourself. Sometimes, I'd pass places that still carried her fingerprint. The grocery store we used to shop at, the small bar where she'd said she loved me for the first time. Memory has a way of testing your strength. But the truth is, it doesn't take strength to remember. It takes discipline not to return. Claire still tried to reach out. Different numbers, new email addresses, messages sent late at night when guilt turns into loneliness. She said she'd been wrong, that she finally saw what she'd lost. But that's the problem with people like her. They only see value in something once it's gone quiet. Once it stops revolving around them. I didn't block her. I didn't respond either. Silence was my boundary, and she kept crashing into it. Each unanswered message was a mirror she had to face alone. Work picked up again. A new project, a residential build on the east side of town. My team noticed the change in me. Less talk, more precision. They said I seemed focused, calm. I wasn't calm. I was empty, but in the best way possible. The noise was gone. One evening, as I was locking up the site, I saw her car parked across the street. She didn't get out, just sat there, engine running. For a long moment, our eyes met through the windshield. No words, no gestures, just the shared understanding of what silence really means. Then she drove away. That night, I didn't think about her. I thought about what comes next. I poured myself a drink, opened my laptop, and began sketching something new, a cabin design overlooking a lake, built from reclaimed wood and glass. A place where everything unnecessary would be stripped away. I didn't name it after her. I named it Horizon. Because that's what moving on looks like, a straight line forward, too far ahead for anyone still looking back. The following weeks passed in silence. The kind of silence that doesn't demand attention but rewards it. I spent most of my time finishing the blueprints for the cabin. Every line I drew felt like a decision. Clean, sharp, deliberate. No wasted space, no noise. Just structure. Stability. Everything my marriage had never been. One evening, while reviewing the layout, I got a message from an unknown number. I already knew who it was before I opened it. The words were short, almost fragile. I miss you. I stared at the screen for a long time, not because of what it said, but because of what it didn't. There was no apology, no ownership, just a craving for attention. A habit she couldn't quit. I didn't respond. I didn't even delete it. I just turned off the phone and left it face down on the counter. Some things deserve neither reaction nor erasure. They just fade on their own. By early summer, construction on the cabin began. I visited the site every morning, coffee in hand, watching the frame rise piece by piece. It reminded me of myself, stripped down, rebuilt, quieter, stronger. Every nail, every beam felt like reclaiming ground I'd given up long ago. On the day the roof was finished, I drove back into town to close out a few accounts. While waiting at a stoplight, I saw her again. Claire. She was standing outside a cafe, phone in hand, scrolling, refreshing, checking. Her posture told the whole story, waiting for something that wasn't coming back. The light turned green. I kept driving. That night, I sat in the cabin's unfinished living room, listening to the wind move through the open walls. It wasn't peaceful yet, but it was honest. And that was enough. I poured a drink, looked out across the lake, and thought about everything that had led me there, every lie, every silence, every moment I'd mistaken attention for love. She used to say I acted like a teenage boy begging for touch. Maybe she was right. Back then, I didn't understand that real strength doesn't chase what's leaving. It builds what's next. Now, she refreshes a phone that doesn't ring. And I build in silence, the kind that doesn't ask for anything back. Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories.